I'm so honored to have you on the show. I'm so excited to have this conversation, both because I've been such a fan of your work and you've influenced the lives of people who have directly changed my life exponentially for the better. We have a mutual friend, Dr. Mark Hyman,
Wow. Wow.
JJ Virgin. Dr. Mark Hyman wrote the foreword to my book. I've been studying Ayurveda, and which is essentially functional medicine, for 16 years.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have taken such a stand for so long and not only paved your own way, but then created this path that thousands and thousands of doctors have started to treat the body as a holistic system and started to remember food as medicine in a way that has, I know, positively impacted the lives of hundreds of millions of people. And so I'm just so grateful to you. And I'm so excited for this conversation. And selfishly, I have some things I want to dive into because I know that you're all about the immune system, bringing us back to nature. And so I have some autoimmune questions I want to talk about. But first, I think let's just name it. That I'd love to call this episode like, "Why isn't everyone practicing functional medicine?"
Yeah.
So what can you just tell us, like, what is functional medicine?
Yeah, I think that the simplest explanation of functional medicine is it's a form of healthcare that's really trying to focus on the origin of why we don't feel well. Rather than what we call it, we can give it a name, a diagnosis. But that doesn't really tell us how we got to that point. What is it that's some people call it upstream or root cause. What are the things that are really happening in our lives? The combination of our genes, this unique facet on the diamond of life that we possess, our book of life.
You call the genes our book of life.
That's what they are. 23
Okay.
chapters encoded half by our biological mother, half by our biological father.
Mhm.
And those chapters encoded in 23 pairs of chromosomes give rise not to how we look, act, and feel, but what our potential might be. And I think that's a very important point of differentiation. A lot of people, I think, still believe that our genes kind of hardwire us into
Yeah.
what we're going to be. And there's little we can do to get outside that. And we never even filled out an application card. We just got the luck of the draw. And if you got a good luck of the draw, yahoo! But if you got a bad luck of the draw, shame on you, or too bad. Medicine is there then to help us survive against bad genes. That's the kind of the concept. And that's a totally wrong concept.
Yeah.
That actually our genes don't tell us exactly what we are and how we're going to be and how we're going to look and how we're going to function. They tell us what we could be. They give us the potential of many different we's. And the we's that become us are going to be the result of how we treat those genes, how we access that information, how we put ourselves in a position where we pull out the white light of good health genes and we set to quiet the genes that are alarmed and hostile and produce the forces of inflammation, the color red, the god of war, Mars. All those things are also in our genes. But which ones do we want to select as our principal ways that we are going to behave in the world?
Oh, it's so beautifully said. The way I see it as a blueprint. It's like, okay, you inherited this blueprint. And so if you don't do anything about it, if you don't change the architect or change the blueprint, that's likely how it will go. But the blueprint does not mean you have a blueprint for a 3-story house. You could choose to change it to a 2-story house or a 10-story house.
That's right.
There is a level of agency there. And so what would you say are the biggest levers that we can use as humans with functional medicine, with food, with meditation, with exercise? Like, what do you feel like are the levers that really allow us to choose which of the healthy genes, which of the blueprint that we want to activate?
Yeah.
What allows us to turn that in, like take agency over who we are and how we utilize that blueprint?
Well, I think the biggest lever of all is probably not the one you would, I guess I would say, but it's choice. I
Mm,
think that the concept that we have little choice in our life, that we're kind of doomed to be whatever we are, and that was kind of already preset, sets in motion a whole set of circumstances throughout our life where we become victims.
yeah.
And if you're in that victim space, then you get pushed around pretty hard by the universe, and it doesn't always treat you well. If, however, you recognize early on or sometime in your life, it can happen at any age, that actually you're the master of your universe, that you are in control.
Mhm.
And as much as there are forces that are going on around you that might want to tell you what you are and what you should do and how you should act and who you should be, that when it comes right down to it, it is our choice as individuals as to how we're going to access those bits of information from other parties and incorporate them within our lives. And so I think that this concept that we gained the confidence, the self-confidence to say we're worthy of making our own choices, that we are put on this planet with a worthiness to do something good for us and good for the planet. And therefore, we're going to then use that most powerful thing we have, which is choice,
Mm.
to make the most intelligent decisions we've had about what kind of life we want to have. Do we
Mm.
want a life of trauma? Do we want a life of sorrow? Do we want a life of confusion? Do we want a life of hostility? Or do we want to put ourselves in an environment that maximizes our opportunities to have a life of enlightenment, a life of joy, a life of companionship? And those choices ultimately then will determine how our genes manifest themselves over the course of whatever decades of living we enjoy.
Mm. And so once we decide, like, okay, I have agency, I have choice, I want to choose the joie de vivre, I want to choose health, I want to choose the most healthy expression of me, then like where, like if you want to like go a little bit more 3D granular, like what do you see the choices that people making that really allow them to step into the healthiest expression of themselves, the most radiant, magnetic expression of themselves?
So there are three things that I know of for sure that every human being that's ever been born or will be born shares in common. And that is they have to eat, they have to breathe, and they have to consume water. Those three things, if you don't do, you will not survive as a human being. So, and those are volitional. You don't have to eat, you don't have to breathe, and you don't have to drink. Therefore, what will be the choices? Now, if you say, well, of course you're going to breathe, and of course you're going to drink fluids, and of course you're going to eat. But now it says, okay, but what are you going to eat?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you going to breathe? And how are you going to move? And how are you going to ultimately manifest how you're taking fluids into your body? Because those things, the quality as well as the quantity, will determine to some reasonable extent how your genes are going to treat you.
Mm.
And this is the big story of our time. The big story of our time is that what we eat is information for our genes. Our food speaks to our genes. Now that sounds maybe very woo-ish and way out there in the ether, but actually that is not woo-ish. It's actually true. What happens is we eat a food, it's broken down by our digestive process. Those components of the food, once broken down, get absorbed into the body. They're also worked upon by our intestinal microbiome, and it does its job to produce a whole series of secondary things from its own metabolism, because we have several hundred different species of organisms that live in our gut that are having their own personalities. So those things together then get absorbed into our body. Those then travel through the bloodstream, and they influence every cell in our body with regard to the information of how they're going to be taken up, processed, and affect our body's function. And so the concept that food is information is not an esoteric kind of blue sky concept. It's actually very real. And certain foods impart different information to our body than other foods. So if you say, why are ultra processed foods not so good? Because the information that ultra processed foods send to the body's cells is to tell the genes that they are in a state of hostility and that the body is under siege. And these are not friendly things that are being consumed. And so the body responds as it should to fight back against what it considers hostility. And what does fighting back mean? It means inflammation. It means insulin resistance. It means hypertension. All these things that the body does in response are the process that we're wired into our body to respond to a hostile environment. So you change your diet to friendly foods, not ultra processed foods. You send this rich array of different information to your body, and what do your genes do then? They say, "Hey, we're hanging out with friends. Let's have a picnic. Let's make life enjoyable. Let's improve resilience. Let's put to rest all these genes of that are there to do battle with the outside world. Let's give them a vacation." So
And what is
that's
it about the processed foods that create that hostility?
Well, I think it's a whole series of things. Let's first talk about probably the most obvious one that everyone talks about, and it's the amount of sugar in our diet.
Mm-hmm.
Sugar, there's nothing wrong with glucose. That's a form of sugar. Probably there's not even anything wrong with sucrose, which is table sugar, at a certain amount.
Hmm.
The body actually is fueled by glucose. It's an important process that our body uses to make energy for all of our organs. But the problem is that a little is good and too much is not good. And so when we start having 130 to 150 pounds of this food in our diet each year,
Hmm.
that is an amount that just overwhelms the orchestra. If you think of our body as an orchestra with all these different sections of the orchestra, the woodwinds, the brass, the percussion, and the strings, that if you were to tell everybody in the orchestra to play forte all the time, loud, hard, uh, whatever that composition of music that would be played normally under proper orchestration now sounds horrible. And it
Hmm.
actually produces catastrophe in the orchestra. The members of the orchestra don't like it if they're having to play forte all the time and they're not using the proper compositional tonality of the piece. Well, the body's the same way. If we just feed it a lot of simple energy in the form of sugar, it overloads those systems. And the
Hmm.
body then, in an overloaded state, feels like it's being stuffed and it's being abused, basically. And so, what does the body do when it's abused? It fights back. It says, "I've got to do battle against this offender," which is now used to be something good, but now it's too much and it's bad. So, sugar would be one really good example of what happens with ultra processed foods. Then we go from there and say, well, what about processed oils, fats? We have the same circumstance there. Diets that are containing partially hydrogenated oils, or diets that are containing a lot of saturated fats, long chain saturated fats, diets that are not balanced between omega 6 and omega 3s. So we're not we're not getting the kind of oils in the diet that the body sees as a harmonious way for it to work. And so, again, ultra processed foods have a whole different selection of chemically processed oils that they feed us, and that's not natural to the body's own process. So then we say, well, what about protein? Well, proteins can be all different types and compositions, and they can be manufactured, and they can be chemically synthesized, and they can be highly processed, and they can be devoid of vitamins and minerals because we strip them all out by making them into soy protein. And so the construct that we're sending all these information signals to the body through a ultra processed diet overloads systems. It doesn't have the proper control, and it doesn't have the other nutrients that are necessary as buddies to properly metabolize those things. And those buddies are things like vitamins and minerals that are there to help orchestrate the proper metabolism of our protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So when we put all that together into now putting colorings and additives and humectants and emulsifiers and plasticizers and all these various other things that go into processed food to make it shelf stable so it can stick around for an eon without going bad, that is what the body sees as hostility. It
Hmm.
doesn't think that's really friendly.
It's wild. Like you go into a grocery store, and I've been thinking this for years. I just go in, I'm like, there's no food here. Like you go to like there's the fruits and vegetables, and that's kind of food, but it's been like engineered and the soil's depleted, but all the rest of them, like there's no actual food here in this grocery store.
Yeah.
And now I have a 6-year-old son. And yesterday, just like bring this down to earth a little bit. Like I went to his school. He's a great school. I'm in Westchester, and he's dealing with an autoimmune issue. So he has pandas or PANS, which is body's reaction to strep. And now there's like like a tick that's happening and some separation anxiety. And so I'm just doing everything that I can to like bring the inflammation down, let his body feel safe, nourish the body. And so I went to his school to look at what was happening in the lunches. And it was like, oh boy. I mean, it was grilled cheese, pizza, chicken nuggets. And then there was packaged foods, like corn chips, chocolate chip cookies made with hydrogenated oil and gluten and sugar. And then there's milk, like chocolate milk with the pasteurized, homogenized, sugar filled chocolate milk. And I was just like, what am I like? How do I have to just take him out of school? And so, it's been such a wild journey to really look at all of the different inputs. And then you combine that with fluorescent lights and screens and and his little body's just 6 years old. And so I'm curious to know, and this is a little bit selfish, but like I think it's sometimes we can talk esoterically and we can also learn from like a singular example, but like what is autoimmune? Because I know you're really big on the immune system, and that we have this beautiful technology inside of our bodies that when we're working in harmony with nature, it can heal, we can regenerate. But then, like you said, it's like if we're constantly feeding it hostile things, then the immune system can go on overdrive. So can you just help us understand, like, what's the light and the shadow of the immune system?
Well, first of all, Emily, I just want to say I know what a challenge it is to have a son or a daughter or a child that has these conditions that have come as a consequence of the world in which we're living today. And my heart goes out to you. I know this is a challenge. It's seemingly almost increasing epidemically across the country. We didn't even have this diagnosis 10 years ago. Panda or PANS was not so frequent that it got into the news as a diagnosis. So now we're seeing it. I mean, we see autism, we see autistic spectrum disorder, we see atopy, allergy, eczema, asthma. These are all increasing significantly in their prevalence. And it wasn't because suddenly kids got born with different genes. We didn't have a generation that suddenly said, well, let's get genes for autoimmune disease. So the reason I believe for that has to do with this whole concept of what is autoimmune disease. So let me give you my kind of quick summary. That's probably overly simple the way I'm saying it, but let me give just the broad
I believe
brush.
the true mark of a master is the ability to communicate complex information simply.
We'll see how I do. So
So if you have ever thought, I am ready for more out of life, more energy, better sleep, deeper human connection, or simply the ability to handle stress like a total boss, then Ziva is for you. So at Ziva, we combine modern science with ancient wisdom to create tools that actually work. Because stress is costing you much more than you realize. It can steal your focus, drain your energy, and keep you from showing up as the human that you know you're meant to be. That's why over 60,000 high performers, CEOs, athletes, parents have turned to Ziva. Our programs don't just teach you skills, they help you master your life. They help you embody your highest potential. So whether you're brand new to this or ready to take your life and your practice to the next level, the best place to start would be Ziva meditation. So in just 15 minutes a day for 15 days, you're gonna learn a practice that will remove stress from your body and transform the way you feel and function every single day. And right now, I'm gonna give you a gift, 15% off, which you can use at checkout by entering the code WHYTHIS. So all you need to do is go to zivameditation.com, find the course that is right for you, because I'm so excited to share these tools with you. I've dedicated my whole life to refining these practices and making them as fun, attractive, and accessible as possible. So go to zivameditation.com and enter the code WHYTHIS on the course that feels right for you, and I will see you inside.
when we say autoimmunity, it sounds as if that person's immune system has become foreign in their own body and is starting to attack itself. It's like we become allergic to ourselves. And if you think of that for a moment, how does a rheumatologist or a medical professional diagnose autoimmune disease? They look for, in the blood, what are called antibodies, that are certain kind of proteins that our immune system makes that are attacking our tissue. So it could be antithyroidal antibodies. That would be like thyroid autoimmunity, in which the immune system was producing a series of proteins that were actually attacking the thyroid gland itself. Or we could think of rheumatoid arthritis, where the body is producing a complex array of antibodies that are attacking connective tissue that holds our joints and skeleton together. And so when you think of autoimmune in that capacity, and you start looking at it even in more detail, what you find out is that these antibodies that the immune system is making that's associated with that autoimmune disease is actually even attacking the DNA upon which we're made. In other words, our genetic material. And you say, oh, just a minute. You mean my immune system is so aggravated that it's going after my book of life? It's actually reacting to my genes that are in my DNA? Now, that's like the worst possible story, right? That suddenly our immune system doesn't like our book of life. So that's the precept that I think many people feel is the origin of autoimmune disease, and it's a very, very discouraging and sad story, because it's like, oh my word, what am I going to do with that? Maybe I just have to block my immune system so it has no voice anymore. And that's what the drugs that we use to treat autoimmune disease in a clinical setting do. These are the so-called TNF alpha blocking agents, Humira and Enbrel and so forth. They actually put a blanket over our immune system so that it stops it from functioning, and that way it can't say that it's allergic to us, our body.
Which I just like pull the lens out. I feel like a lot, not all of, but oftentimes with allopathic or Western medicine, like that is the plan. Here's the symptom. Let's mute or mask or treat the symptom, versus looking at why is this imbalance occurring. And it's what I love so much about Ayurveda and functional medicine, is that it's pulling the lens back and saying, okay, why is the immune system attacking itself? How do we create balance? And so I just want to and I'm not anti-allopathic medicine. I'm really glad that it exists. If I get into a car accident, please take me directly to the hospital. And I think there are more sophisticated technologies and systems at treating root cause, of which you are elucidating us on right now.
That was a beautiful summary. See, you just did the job that you were asking me to do. You just summarized that. It's fantastic. So now let's take what you just said and ask, what's the pivotal question that comes out of that? What comes out of that, I think, is the recognition that autoimmune disease, I believe, is actually not some defect in our immune system. It's not like our immune system went rogue and started to attack us. It's actually the immune system doing what it's designed to do, and that is to go out and seek and destroy foreigners, to prevent foreigners from taking over our body. Mm-hmm. So why would you consider your thyroid gland to be a foreigner? Or why would you consider your cartilage in your knee to be a foreigner? And the answer is, I don't think the immune system actually does. What happens is us becomes non-us. What happens is that our body undergoes injuries at the metabolic level. For instance, if we eat too much sugar, what happens is too much sugar then binds with the body's proteins to take what were normal body's proteins that our immune system recognizes friends and convert them into unfriendly proteins that our body doesn't recognize. Now, why is it then that diabetic patients who have a blood sugar problem often then end up with arthritis? Because the sugar they're having a problem metabolizing is binding to proteins like A1C. Hemoglobin A1C is hemoglobin that's bound to sugar, and our body then recognizes that as a foreign protein. It's not the protein that we're made of, it's a foreigner, and our immune system does what it is supposed to do. It attacks it. Unfortunately, we have bystander injury because it's attacking us in the same process. Mm-hmm. So how do you then, if you take that model, that we don't have a defective immune system, we have a super active immune system that's attacking stuff that has been injured, how do you get rid of the injuries? Well, you clean up your diet, you get rid of toxins, you clean up your gut microbiome, you do the things that are upstream that cause then the tissues to be injured and to be formed into something that the immune system says is not friendly. And when you do that, when you start taking away those things that are making us into non-us, when we become non-us, our immune system then tries to protect us from non-us. And it makes this what we call an autoimmune disease. So it's not like we're allergic to ourselves. We are allergic to our body having been transformed into something that is not us. Mm-hmm. And then what we have to do is reverse that process, making us us again and getting rid of the non-us, which is this whole process of the things that you were describing, eating diets that don't have things that make us non-us. Thinking the right thoughts so we don't have stress reactions that create oxidative injuries to cells and proteins that make us non-us. Don't be exposed to chemicals. We know that all these autoimmune diseases are tied to what is called xenobiotic exposures. Xenobiotics means foreign molecules. Stuff out there, there's, 50,000 new chemicals have been introduced into our environment in the last 5 years.
50,000 in the last 5 years?
Yes. Oof. And no one knows what those things, even at very, very low levels, what effects they can have on sensitive immune systems. And so all these things are part of what we're learning And they're also part of the opportunities that we have to clean up the foreigners out of our body and make us more like us and less like something else.
So you brought up an interesting point around stress. So I'm a meditation teacher. That's what we do at Ziva. We teach people how to meditate every day, twice a day on their own. And the thing about Ziva is that it's not just dealing with the stress in the now. It's not just about a state change, like, oh, let's do a guided visualization and bring us from stressed into bliss right now. It's actually about a trait change. So it's giving people tools to de-excite the nervous system, to create order in the body, to eradicate the backlog of stresses in the cellular memory so that the body can function as it is designed. It's like same thing, taking away the foreigners in this case, which would be stress, and bringing the body back into its original design, which can increase your state of consciousness, improve your immune function, improve your sleep. Like the ripple effect of getting rid of stress lodged in the nervous system can be very profound in my experience and in my anecdotal experience. I have not run a study. I am not a doctor. So I'm very curious to hear from your POV, like, how have you seen meditation and functional medicine work with each other, and can you speak to the science of eradicating stress?
You're, I think, 100% on target. You are a leader in this area. This is so important. I learned this in my own life, actually, in a very unusual way, but it's paid dividends over the years. I've traveled over 6 million miles in my life, so I've been on a lot of planes, and so what happened to me many years ago, I recognized, is that when I would get on a plane, I would hardly ever know that the plane had taken off, because I would get myself once in the seatbelt on, kind of in quiet state. I would go into kind of a rest state. Well, actually, I came to recognize that I was meditating.
Yes.
And I would normally then wake up about 20 minutes later out of this meditative state. So once I recognized that I was actually meditating, that this was a way that I could get myself into that state, then I was able to start accessing that in other ways. That was kind of my lesson plan, is to say, wow, this is pretty cool. I wake rest, refreshed, and clear. Maybe I ought to find other ways through the day other than just being on a plane that I could do that. Yeah. And so I'm recognizing, we could get into the neuropsych physiology and talk about the vagus nerve and talk about the lymphatics of the brain and releasing toxins and getting better lymphatic drainage and all sorts of different neurological and neuroendocrine effects that occur out of meditation, which has been well proven. I mean, Herb Benson's done many studies on this over the years. So what I found in my own life was a direct kind of support for what you've been teaching. And it's been a huge, I think, asset for me to be able to travel 6 million miles and do the things that I've done.
And how old were you when you sort of discovered your own way in to this state?
Let's see. Probably in my middle 30s, I would say.
Okay, so
I had enough travel. Yeah, and actually, tomorrow's my 79th birthday, so that's a few years ago.
What? Happy birthday!
Well, thank you.
My birthday's next week. So are you an Aries or no? Not quite.
Yeah, I am an Aries. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I've always said that I wanted to do like group meditations on airplanes, because most people are in that in between, right? If we're not just staring at screens the whole time, we're not quite asleep, we're not quite awake. So we're in this pre-hypnagogic state of consciousness, which is very similar to the state that we access during Ziva meditation. And we actually have a thing called Ziva Travels, where we have like a 90% reduction in jet lag, because jet lag is just the body burning up adaptation energy.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the body having to adapt to something that's not natural. So when we meditate, when we fly, it's like we're filling up adaptation energy. So I love that your body quite innocently discovered this way to adapt to all the travel that you were doing. And I feel like that was nature taking care of you, because you have such an important message, like needs to be out there in the world.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's interesting. We're talking about meditation as a signal. It's sending a signal to your body for what I would call kind of rejuvenation, renewal. Mm-hmm. And so we have a lot of processes going on in our life all the time that are on the fast lane of degeneration, of senescence, of things being broken down.
What does senescence mean?
Senescence means the aging process, getting older.
Okay.
So And of course, senescence is more than just your age and birthdays. Biological aging can occur at different paces from your chronological aging.
I'm convinced I'm aging backwards. I'm going to be 46 next week, and I feel like I'm
Oh
stronger
my
and
word!
more
Well, congratulations,
vibrant.
you're radiant. You're radiating. So yeah,
Thanks. But I've been meditating every day, twice a day for 16 years, and eating food that is food, and studying Ayurveda, which you could argue is sort of like the ancient mother of functional medicine. Like if you're the father of functional medicine, have been done such a beautiful job of bringing these ideologies and technologies into the West and translating it into an allopathic medical zeitgeist.
uh-huh.
But this is not new information, right? Like it's been around for thousands.
Yes,
I mean, a lot of what you're
exactly.
describing is new, but the ideologies have been around for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, I think my contribution was just, as you said, putting it into kind of a formalism of systems biology. It's
Mhm.
a Western model for kind of understanding mechanistically how these things that traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, many traditional forms of healthcare were already doing these things in their practices because of the history of observation. They saw
Yeah.
that they worked, and I kind of put the formalism around these as a Western model of here's how you can measure them, here's how you can understand them, and if you're a practitioner, here's how you can put an operating system together to help a patient uh, discover how they're going to put their path together for enlightened health.
And I'm so curious about that process and you personally. Like, was it just like a knowing? Was there a download? Was it just like, oh, I am uniquely positioned to translate these worlds and help to marry these worlds of ancient modalities with more like modern allopathic Western medicine? Did it just happen sort of organically? But I feel like it's such a superpower to be able to translate and to merge worlds. And you've done such an extraordinary job of it. But I'm just curious, like, was there a moment where like, I'm dedicating my life to this? Did it happen to you? Can you give us a little window into that?
Yeah, I think that there's, like all of our lives, there's many different things that create what we become as we collect our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
When we're born, we have this pluripotential. We're like a tree with no ornaments. And then as we grow older, we have experiences of life that we put ornaments on the tree. And you want to put as many really glamorous ornaments as you can, because at the end of life, you'd like this to be a glorious tree that you're leaving that's fully adorned. So for me, I had a number of places along the road that I think were really quite important. I think what really created this whole impetus for my life probably was I was a medical school professor in 1970. I started,
You were
and
teaching at medical school.
yeah, I was doing research and teaching at a medical school. And unfortunately, big unfortunately, my wife and my son, who was 4 months old at the time when I started this job, passed away.
Mm. Both of them passed at the same time.
No, my son passed away at 4 months.
Mm.
And so it really then called into question what I wanted to do with all this training that I had, and it got me searching, looking for answers, because I thought if I could help one set of parents or one child avoid that, it would be a life well served. So that kind of set me on a search outside my normal things I'd been trained to supposedly understand. And that search really paid off dividends because it sent me ultimately, as I said, around 6 million miles around the world, meeting all sorts of people that are leaders in all sorts of ideas. And I'm kind of a mosaic of all those ideas. So that's number one. Number two was I had the great fortune of, after 13 years of being a professor, of having a sabbatical a couple of years working with the two-time Nobel Prize winning laureate Linus Pauling at Stanford and his wife Eva Helen, who were two unbelievably remarkable people. And
And what's the Nobel Prize in? I'm not familiar
well,
with.
he gained he won a Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1955, but then he won a second Nobel Prize in peace. If you can imagine that.
I really like that, like the chemistry of peace, because that is a
That's
big
right.
part of what you, I mean, it's what you led with. It's like, let's get our bodies into peace, into
You
coherence.
said it. And so that was being around he and his wife, who were just remarkable guides and people of principle, was a life change incident. And it was because of that that I actually gave up my tenured faculty position after my 2-year sabbatical with Dr. Pauling and made a decision I was going to spend the rest of my life trying to teach health practitioners how to do what he calls molecular medicine, what I then later called functional medicine in their practices. So this was 1984. And, there was a lot of interesting things because I gave up the security of my tenured faculty position. I had children. I had a mortgage. I didn't know exactly how I was ultimately going to make a living, but I decided, okay, this is my calling. We're going to do this. And so away we went. And from that, then, the last, what is it, well, nearly 50 years emerged.
Wow. And if you think about your deathbed slideshow, right? Like you're on your final moments and you're playing the slideshow of all the ornaments that you've collected on this beautiful tree. Is there anything that stands out of like, wow, I feel really proud of that. Like that's a beautiful ornament. I'm so glad I got to contribute to that or receive that.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think it's my three sons who have all chosen with their families and these wonderful women that they've chosen to be their partners. Who I'm very fortunate to have wonderful daughter-in-laws and their children, my grandchildren. They're all very committed to this field, and they're bringing these thoughts into their work and their lives. And
That is a big deal because there is the preacher's kid syndrome, right? Where it's like, I'm not doing religion. That was forced down my throat. And the fact that you've been such a like neutral emissary and an ambassador that all three of your sons are now in this field is a big deal. So bravo.
yeah, I think it is as well. And in fact, we were together this last weekend. We were talking about this because they didn't feel forced into it. It was that they were kind of guided by the principles and the people they met. Of course, they had the fortune of seeing all these people that we met over the years come and give their opinions. And I think it's been really, really very interesting. And when I think, in fact, it's hilarious. I was speaking to my oldest son, who now is 55, and I was giving him some, quote, fatherly advice. This is recently. And he said, so, Dad, no disrespect to you at all, but I want you to know two things. First of all, I always listen to you and take what you say very seriously. And secondly, I am middle-aged. And I and I said, okay, I kind of get it. Yes.
You might be middle-aged, but I'm still older than you, and I still have more
That's right,
experience than you.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
oh, that's great. And can you, for folks who are listening who might be like a little on the fence or like, okay, yeah, functional medicine, food is medicine, but I'm just going to eat my, white bread and have my, soda and I'm going to take my antibiotics and I'm just going to do the standard American thing because, well, if everyone else is doing it, like, why shouldn't I? Like, why shouldn't I change? And there is some argument because I'm getting some pushback with my son of like, well, what is the stress of trying to avoid gluten, avoid sugar, avoid dairy when he's swimming in this societal system? Like, is it more stressful for him to not have the cupcake at the birthday party than it would be for him to have the birthday? It's like it's a bit of a dance because there are societal
I
implications.
think you use the right word. I think that is a dance. And I think that's the magic of parenting. It's also the opportunity because too rigid a catechism creates its own stress and produces its own impact that can be sometimes negative.
Mm-hmm.
So finding that subtle balance as to where you are willing to understand every person's life has some boundaries and you want to have the opportunity for them to move around within those boundaries.
Yeah.
So, I'm not against cupcakes for birthday parties. What I'm against is cupcakes for every meal. And, so I had some principles that I raised all three of my sons on, and they were, I think, in fact, they're now using them with their kids, which I find very, very, very interesting. And the principles were always treat yourself with respect.
Hmm.
Secondly, you're going to be confronted with millions of decisions that you'll make about yourself, and some of those will push you to the edge. But you should always be aware of when a decision could put you or someone else's life in jeopardy. And so there should be a barrier that prevents you from ever stepping over that line. You should, that's your default. You never go beyond that line. And you should know what that is and really have it clear. So if one of your friends is drunk and they're driving and you don't want to be in that car, then you shouldn't be in that car. And those kind of decisions about your life. And then third, that you ought to always recognize that you have amazing talents that you don't even fully understand that are buried in your capabilities. And at the end of life, the winners are the people that have found how to access the majority of them and make them part of
The
themselves.
majority
And
of their own innate talents.
that's right. And so you're not always going to make perfect decisions. You're not always going to have exactly the right things, but in the mosaic or the composition of your life, if you use these principles as guiding principles, you will have more opportunities to be a winner than you'll ever have to be a loser. And in the end, that'll make you very, very, I think, successful in your life.
Thank you for sharing those three principles. It feels great even for non-parents. Those are great principles to live by, period. So what I was going to ask is, like, for people who are a little bit more skeptical or newer to functional medicine, or like maybe understand, okay, maybe food is medicine, but I'm just used to like a pharmaceutical bottle as medicine. Can you share like a story or something where someone made like a real, like seemingly miraculous transformation where they started to use food as medicine, where they started to awaken their immune system in a way that was inspiring? Basically,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
could sell us on functional medicine.
Let's stay on the autoimmune theme here for a moment. I think many specifics come to mind, but I'll use one that I think exemplifies it.
Have you ever had a moment where nature just drops the exact message you need exactly when you need it? Maybe it's a reminder to slow down. Maybe it's a fresh perspective on something you've been stuck on, or just the perfect nudge to help you embody your highest self. Well, that is what I want to give you every single week, a dose of Ziva straight from my heart to yours. When you sign up for my emails, you're going to get first access to the downloads that are coming straight into my heart, access to science-backed tools to help you stress less and feel more alive. You're going to get a sneak peek into my personal practice and all the perks that we only share with our Ziva insiders. You're going to get podcast announcement and exclusive offers and invitation to our events before anyone else. And because I love a good thank you gift, if you sign up right now, you're going to get a special welcome gift just for signing up, and it's totally free. It just might be the very best thing you do for yourself today. So you can go to the link in the show notes or go to zivameditation.com/whythis to get a beautiful welcome gift and to receive these transmissions from my heart to yours every single week. So head to zivameditation.com/whythis, and I will see you in your inbox.
So for about 12 years, I had a very significant research facility doing clinical studies on food as medicine. We published many papers. I had about 60 people working for me, medical people, laboratorians, research people. And we saw patients on institutional review board approved procedures.
What does that mean?
Well, in order to do research studies that you're going to publish into a journal, you have to go through a process called an IRB, Institutional Review Board, that reviews your protocol to make sure you're not putting people at risk, that you fulfilled all the conventions of proper research protocol. And so in this one study, we were doing a study on autoimmune disease related to dietary intervention. And the morning, I can recall it so vividly. In the morning, in walks one of our docs who has the local newspaper in his hand, and he flops it down on my desk and he says, "Look at the front page of this newspaper, Jeff." And so I looked at it. It was a photograph of a pair of hands. Couldn't see the person, only see the hands that were filled with pills. And he said, "This is disgusting." And I said, "What's disgusting?" He says, "Well, if you read the article, this is about a story of a young woman in her late 30s who has 3 children, who lives in our area, who has this very unusual kind of autoimmune disease called erythromyalgia that is so severe in her situation that she basically is housebound. She can't stand for very long. The pain in her feet are so severe that she can't walk in any distance. And this is a photograph of her hands holding the pills that she takes every day for the treatment of this condition. And she's being treated by one of the top rheumatologists in our area." And so he says to me, "This is ridiculous. We can help this woman." And I said, "Well, I don't know. It's a pretty extreme case. And, this is not like playing with just minor. This is very severe." And he says, "Yeah, I know, but we've had enough experience around here that I think we could really help her. And I'd like to reach out and contact her." Uh, but maybe you feel that this would put us at medical legal jeopardy if
Mm.
we did that, and so I want to get your approval before I would reach out. So we did that. We did reach out, and under the condition that her rheumatologist would approve her participation in this program because it was a diet program. So he felt, well, as long as it was only diet and she could continue on her medications, he was okay with it. So she went into our program, and I remember seeing her arrive the first time for her first visit. She was with her husband. The parking spot she was in was right in front of my office, so I could see her trying to get out of the car. She was just really disabled. It was very awkward in even walking across the parking lot. And so she went into our program, and she was really dedicated. And it was a program really built around the themes that we already talked about, taking away the bad stuff and giving back the good stuff.
Mhm.
And we actually had her on a very defined diet. We were using a specific medical food that was so we could really control her diet carefully. And over the course of really a few weeks, she felt that she was getting better, and she had 3 wishes. We had what we call the magic wand rule. And we say to the person, if you had a magic wand, what would be your 3 wishes for things that you would want? And her 3 wishes, I recall, it was really powerful, was she wanted to be able to stand at the kitchen counter to prepare a meal for her family, which she couldn't do. She wanted to be able to plant her garden in the spring and go outside and plant her garden.
Mm.
And she wanted to go to the mall and go walking with her kids to get a pair of walking shoes. Those were her 3 big wishes. And so we saw her start improving, and we saw her doctor start reducing the amount of medication she was having to take. And this went on for some months, actually. She stayed in the program for some months. And then there was this great celebratory day in which she came in smiles, and now she was walking very briskly from her car by herself to the office. She wasn't having to be driven by her husband anymore. And she said, this is a big celebration day because I just went with my kids to the local shopping mall, and we walked the whole mall, and they bought me shoes. And so I now have walking shoes, and I'm going to plant gardens, and I'm making meals, and we had a whole celebration among the staff. Well, then let me roll forward about 6 more months. So this was like January, and then by June, she made an appointment, and she was no longer in our program. She had kind of graduated out of the program. We hadn't seen her for a couple of months. And she called, she said, I'd like to come in and have a conversation with the staff. And of course, we were hopeful it was going to be a good conversation and she wasn't going to come back and say everything fell apart. So she came back, and she had a wrapped package, which she then awarded to the doc and our head nutrition person, our head doc, who, when it opened it up, was a photograph, quite large, maybe 2 by 3 feet size, framed. It was a photograph of her at the top of a mountain outside of Seattle, Cal Mount Si. It's a trail, and it's not like a technical climbing, but it's a very, very steep trail. It's a very demanding trail. The fitness people even have some stress going up it. And here she is at the top of Mount Si, and she's carrying a sign that says, thank you, Dr. Jack and Deanna, the 2 people that were the principals. She had walked to the top of Mount Si by herself. So it only takes a few of those to make a believer, right? And that for our whole staff, everyone was in tears, obviously.
It makes me want to cry. And it's like, I'm struck by, if you don't have your health, like that, her big dream is making a meal for her family.
Yeah.
Like tonight when I'm like, oh God, I got to cook dinner again. It's like, let me not take for granted the gift that it is to stand at my counter and prepare food for my son. Like, oh gosh, I'm going to go, I got to exercise. Like, let me not take for granted the gift.
Yes.
Body moves, and that I've had the privilege of having access to functional medicine and supplementation and these ideologies and modalities, that my body is getting healthier as I age and not the reverse. And so I just thank you for sharing that. it's such a beautiful example of why we want to be practicing functional medicine. And I know we just have a few minutes left before your next meeting, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to answer the question, why isn't everyone practicing functional medicine? Like, what are the roadblocks here?
Yeah, I think anything that's new, that's out of maybe what you've been trained, is you feel like you have to break ranks. We
Mm-hmm.
call it the guild. When you go through a professional healthcare education and you get certified and you take an exam to be licensed, you're a member of the guild, and
Or like the medical guild, like with doctors.
yeah, the medical guild.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you stay within the guild, it'll protect you. If you step out, now you're vulnerable. People will criticize and you're more in jeopardy. And there's a more secure income associated with that whole approach. And so for a lot of people, it's just too much change for them to accommodate. Uh, and some people would say, maybe it's best I don't have to learn something new, because then it's going to create a lot of stress in my life. I already went through stress in my training. I already am certified. I don't want to be confused with having to learn a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
So I think there's many barriers, but what I'm very excited to see is that the concept of functional medicine has continued to grow geometrically, and it's growing by word of mouth. It's not like a big advertisement thing that we're out there promoting. And it's drawing in a lot of very remarkably talented people like yourself that are, absolutely committed to the right things, changing the planet, being concerned about sustainability and survivability of the species, and all these kind of important issues. And what I'm finding in the Institute for Functional Medicine is and I predicted this a number of years ago, there are now I think more female practitioners than there are male practitioners in the Institute for Functional Medicine. I think it's the largest group of accredited female doctors probably in medicine. And I think that
Like the
this,
original witchcraft, right? It's like we're just coming back to our
well,
roots.
yeah, because they're the keepers of the family. They're the keepers of the flame. And I think that all sorts of things that makes it very real. They speak to one another in more cooperative terms, and it's less technology and more cooperative. And so I think all these things are positive signs for how this is growing up and
Mm.
evolving.
I think so too. And I mean, I know it's controversial, but there is, there are changes happening at the governmental level. And, like it or not, like RFK getting in and his like willingness to sort of stand up against the pharmaceutical complexes. Like it's a fascinating time to be alive. And I just want to really say thank you for the seeds that you've planted, for the dexterity of intellect and your ability to synthesize all of these different modalities and then translate them into a community that is incentivized to stay in the status quo. And
Yeah.
so it really speaks to your passion and your bravery. And I feel like, God willing, prayers up. I'd love to do another podcast with you because I want to get more esoteric, more energetic medicine, more with you and talk about like a little bit more of the woo, because I can tell that that's there. But I think that this has been a beautiful introduction to you and your work. Where can people find you? I know you've got a beautiful company called Big Bold Health, but like if people are falling in love with you and they want to understand more about functional medicine or the work that you're doing with the body and the environment, where can they go?
Yeah, I think two places, Emily. One is bigboldhealth.com. We've got all sorts of videos and things about the immune system, because ultimately what I recognized was the immunity is such an important part of this whole equation. If you've got a
Yeah.
strong immune system, then you have a lot more resilience. So that's one place. And the other is jeffreybland.com, JEFFREYBLAND.com. I have my virtual Jeff there, so I can answer questions. So
Oh, that's exciting. So I could go in and ask questions about my son and pandas, and I could get like virtual Jeff answering questions.
yeah, it's actually amazing. This
You
whole
did that
kind
with
of,
AI? Have you
yeah,
created?
and
Okay.
actually, it's my family was freaked out at first because the voice synthesis is so good.
Yeah.
It actually sounds like me. And what they did is they captured a couple of terabytes of all my stuff I've ever done and
Mhm.
synthesized it into a AI program.
Great.
So you can ask Jeff anything you might want to ask him.
And I can get that at jeffreybland.com.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, I'm going there right now. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your mastery and your time and your passion with us. It's been such a joy. And sweet friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode as much as I have. If you've been inspired, go check out Dr. Bland's work. And we will see you next week on Why Isn't Everyone Doing This?